Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 12 of my podcast, Book and Story World with author Priya Grewal. So I hope everyone's having a fabulous week so far. For today's episode, I will read out part 2 of my horror novel, Vampires Strike the Town by myself, Priya Grewal, with the subtitle Evil Has Arrived on the front cover. So last week I read out chapters 1 to 9 in season 3 episode 11, and today I will read out the remaining 9 chapters, so that's the rest of the book. So Vampires Strike the Town, available on Amazon in paperback or on Kindle, is a teen horror novel. So let's just have a quick recap of what's happened so far. So the story starts with 2 boys walking to school called Rascal and Tolian. They've just started year 12. Tolian's dad is a police officer in the town, and he tells Rascal a secret. So Tolian tells Rascal that the police have found dead bodies in the town somewhere with puncture wounds on their necks. Rascal is then shocked to learn that this may mean that vampires exist. So he also thinks that it means vampires exist as well. He promises to keep it a secret and not even tell his parents or sister. So, meanwhile, Rascal's also thinking about the beautiful new girl who's just started their school. The school Rascal and Tolian go to. So she's flashed a few dazzling smiles in his direction, and eventually he's decided to approach her and say hello. So the 2 exchanged phone numbers, and Rascal asked to meet up with Helios, the beautiful new girl, and they went for some ice cream and became friends. So that was during the weekend. Then on the Monday, Rascal receives a text message from Tolian saying he won't be walking to school today, which is rather mysterious, and he'll be in later. So Rascal walks to school by himself, thinking about vampires existing as well. And then when he reaches the school gate, his other 2 friends, Kato and Joet, inform him that a girl in his English class has been murdered. Her name is Shu now, and Rascal's response is true horror as he realizes that vampires must have killed her, because it's too much of a coincidence for killings to be happening and vampires to be apparently striking as well. So let's pick up where we left off. Vampires Strike the Town by myself, Priya Grewal. The last couple of lines of chapter 9 was, "She was murdered," Joet finished for Kato. Rascal stopped dead in his tracks. It felt as if his world was turning on its head again, knowing that a girl from their school year had been killed by vampires. Chapter 10. Around 35 minutes later, Rascal was sitting in assembly next to Kato and Joet. She must have been killed by vampires, Rascal thought to himself. It's way too much of a coincidence to have been murdered by someone or something else at the same time as dead bodies are being found with puncture wounds on their necks by the police, Rascal rationalized to himself. Shoo now, Rascal thought to himself. He hadn't spoken to her much before, but he couldn't believe that her seat in English class would now be empty. She was only 17 and should have had her whole life ahead of her. Rascal stopped thinking for a moment as he saw Helios enter the assembly room. She glanced at him quickly and smiled as she made her way to a seat. Rascal quickly smiled back at her, feeling a little warmer on the inside. Her hair was tied up in a bun today, and Rascal was momentarily distracted from the situation by her radiance. She probably hasn't heard yet, Rascal thought to himself. A few moments later, the head teacher called for silence and stood in the centre of the platform stage. His name was Mr. Carrad. He cleared his throat. As some of you may have heard, a student in your year called Shunal has been tragically murdered, Mr. Carrad continued. An intense silence fell over the year group. Her body was found yesterday around 7:30 p.m. near an alleyway near her house. She had just been meeting up with friends and on her way home when she must have been attacked in an alleyway, a shortcut to her house, Mr. Carrad told them all. Some members of the year group clapped their hands over their mouths, reacting to the horror of the situation. Raskow continued to listen, fear gripping his insides. Mr. Carrot paused for a moment. Shuna was a lovely girl loved by her friends and teachers. She will be missed, Mr. Carrot continued. We have been advised as a school by the police to warn all students not to go out by themselves after dark for their own safety until the murderers are caught. It is believed she was killed once the sky had darkened for the evening, Mr. Carrot advised the year group. Please do pass this message on to the rest of your peers in the school, who will also be informed, Mr. Carrot continued to tell the students. Now, please join me in a minute's silence in honor of your fellow peer Shunal, Mr. Carrot instructed the year group, falling into silence a moment later. The silence of the assembly felt deafening to Raskow, bowing his head, feeling more and more scared about the vampires killing more and more in town. Now someone his own age had been killed. Raskow couldn't help himself from glancing at Helias. Her head was bowed respectfully. After a few more agonizing seconds of silence, the school buzzer rang. Mr. Carrot dismissed the year group, instructing them all to head to their classes. Raskow let out a sigh of relief. The secret that vampires are real and killing in town was beginning to feel like a heavier and heavier burden on his shoulders. Raskow lifted up his rucksack and headed towards his English class where Shunal wouldn't be. He made his way up the stairs to his classroom, fear threatening to overcome him. Chapter 11. It was first break by the time Tolian came into school. Fortunately, Kato and Joette were distracted playing football when Raskow noticed Tolian walk into the school. He left the game and grabbed his rucksack to go to speak to Tolian. Tolian glanced at him apprehensively as Raskow approached him. Tolian, Raskow called out. Raskow hurried and stood in front of Tolian, pausing for a moment. What's happening? He asked, referring to the vampires. Tolian looked pale. Mr. Carrot told the whole year group about Shunal being killed. Raskow began to speak quietly. I assume you've already heard. Tolian nodded his head slowly. He finally spoke a moment later. Sorry I couldn't give you any more detail about this morning. Sorry I couldn't give you any more detail about it this morning. My dad kept me at home and wanted to know everything I knew about Shunal. I didn't want to mention anything in the text message as my dad was watching me while I texted you. I told him all I knew. She was a nice girl, looked friendly, and had her poem published in the school magazine recently, Tolian confided in Raskow. I didn't know anything more than that, Tolian told Raskow. My dad just dropped me to school now. He couldn't believe it when they found a teenage girl's body. He wants to pick me up from school too. You can jump in and we can drop you home if you want, Tolian asked Raskow. Yeah, sure, Raskow responded. I don't think my dad wants me to go anywhere unattended at the moment, and my mum agreed, Tolian told Raskow. Raskow thought about this for a moment. Was the entire town going to begin to stay indoors? Would students only be leaving their houses to go to school? Let's sit down, Raskow suggested. Tolian and Raskow went to sit on an empty bench. Shunal was in my English class, Raskow told Tolian when they were both seated. It was so weird looking at her empty seat. It's awful, Tolian responded. I'm so scared. Raskow paused for a moment. Anything new about the vampires? Raskow asked Tolian. Tolian glanced around the school courtyard before responding. I think the police force are secretly gathering weapons. They're getting everything mentioned in films and books. They've made stakes, collected crucifixes and garlic. They're researching vampires at the station and always mention to kill them in any book or film ever made on vampires, Tolian told Raskow. Well, that's something, Raskow muttered. Any ideas on who the vampires are? Raskow asked. Tolian shook his head. Could be anyone. They've got no idea who the culprits are and how many of them there are, Tolian told Raskow. Raskow responded, trying to think who could be the vampires killing in town. The school buzzer rang, making both the two boys jump out of their skin for a moment. It was the end of break time. Raskow and Tolian both stood up and made their way in silence to their next classes, both feeling shocked and anxious. Chapter 12. It was lunchtime by the time Raskow ran into Helias in the canteen. Hi, Helias called behind him as he threw his leftovers in the bin and set down his plate. Oh, hey, Raskow replied, feeling distracted, but felt happier seeing Helias smile up at him. Helias threw her leftovers in the bin too a moment later. He was distracted thinking about Shunal's murder. It's awful, isn't it? Helios murmured, looking up at Raskal with a look of concern on her face. Raskal couldn't help but be distracted by her beauty. Her green eyes glimmered and her hair fell in shiny glowing curls. It doesn't mean I can't enjoy myself still, Raskal thought to himself as he cheered up talking to Helios. He felt bad for a moment forgetting about Shunal's killing, but told himself it was okay to still seek joy in speaking to friends, especially Helios, even at times like these. Let's walk to registration together, Raskal suggested. Kato, Joa, and Tolian glanced behind themselves at Raskal and Helios and carried on walking ahead of them. It's horrendous, Raskal continued the conversation a moment later. Did you know her well? Helios asked curiously as the two walked to afternoon registration together. Not really, Raskal replied. She was in my new Year 12 English class, but I didn't get a chance to talk to her yet. We've just been reading a book together as a class in our seats, Raskal told Helios. It must still feel weird to not have her there anymore, though, Helios inquired. Yes, it was really strange this morning during class, Raskal responded. They both paused for a moment. I really did have a good time the other day going for ice cream, Helios told Raskal a moment later, changing the subject. Raskal smiled down at Helios, who was smiling happily up at him again. So did I, Raskal responded. Maybe we can do it again sometime, Helios suggested. Hopefully they'll catch the killers soon and we can all leave our houses again like normal, Helios added. I sure hope so, Raskal replied, wanting the vampires to be killed so he could get his freedom back to go out socially again too. He thought it was best to take heed of Tolian's dad's advice to not leave the house unattended. Well, here I am, Helios exclaimed, standing in front of her afternoon registration class door. Raskal paused in front of the door. Helios wrapped her arms around Raskal all of a sudden again, hugging him tightly. Raskal felt surprised again for a moment and then hugged her back. Helios hugged him for a little longer this time. Raskal liked the feel of her in his arms. She finally let go a few seconds later. She flashed a smile at him and said, "Bye," turning around to enter her classroom and shut the door behind her. Raskal felt warmth and giddiness rise inside himself in response to the hug. He went to his afternoon registration classroom feeling a little dazed and merrily bewildered. Chapter 13. Raskal spent the rest of the week getting a lift home from school from Tolian's dad, Mr. Coman. Mr. Coman didn't know that Raskal knew about the vampires. He just thought that Raskal was jumping in for a lift due to finding out about Shunal's murder. Raskal's parents had approved of this but had asked for Raskal to walk to school in the morning with Lazella and her friends so his sister had a chaperone. They were worried about her being persuaded to cut school by her friends and be in danger spending the day around town instead. Raskal had listened to Lazella and her friends talk about the murder on the way to school and discussed whether they should make up a dance to try out for the school's show, which was in a couple of months' time. Raskal had reassured the girls that the show would probably still be going ahead and not be cancelled due to the murder. They had seemed pleased about this and eager to start coming up with the dance together. The rest of the week felt like the year group was slowly trying to adjust to the news about Shunal's murder. Everyone was talking about not being allowed out after dark. Most of their parents were spending the evenings indoors too. Tolian, Kato, Joa, and Raskal were discussing the murder again at break time in their year group common room. They were in the common room as it was raining outside. I wonder if there are going to be any more murders, Joa asked, still looking semi-shocked over the murder. I hope not, Kato commented. They'd have to shut down everything then, surely. People can't just keep going to work and school as normal with a serial killer around. That's true, Joa concluded. Raskal nodded his head in agreement. Tolian looked mysterious again and worried. Raskal glanced around the common room and saw Helios walk in and wave at him. She beckoned him over to her with her hand. Ooh, look, Joa commented. Helios is beckoning you over to her. Raskal grinned, looking at Helios. Looks like you two are getting on well, Kato added. Is love in the air yet? Raskal laughed. One step at a time, Raskal told them all. I just like hanging with her at the moment. Ooh, Joa teased. Tolian stared dumbfounded at Helios and managed a small grin finally. Poor guy, Raskal thought to himself about Tolian. He's gripped by fear about the vampires. Raskal jumped off the table he was sitting on. I'd better go and say hello, Raskal told his friends. Yeah, you better, Kato teased Raskal. Raskal smiled and grabbed his rucksack and handed it over to Helias. She was standing a little distance away from her friend, so Raskal could talk to her alone. Hey, Helias greeted enthusiastically. Hey, Raskal greeted back with a smile. How are you doing? Good, thanks, Helias replied. And yourself? Yeah, I'm okay, Raskal commented, sounding monotone. I think we're still processing the news about Shunal being killed, Raskal confided in Helias. I know, Helias agreed, eyes wide. It's becoming a real state of fear around here, isn't it? Helias observed. Raskal thought on her words for a moment and glanced around the common room. It sure is, he commented. Are your parents being super protective? Raskal asked Helias. Same as everyone else's, I guess, Helias responded. Raskal nodded his head. Mine are insistent on the rules about not being out after dark, too. Speaking of which, Helias stated, looking shy. Raskal looked down at her beautiful face. What's up? Raskal asked. I don't have anyone to walk home with after school. My usual friend isn't at school today, and I feel kind of scared walking by myself, Helias confided in him. Okay, Raskal responded, listening. So, I was wondering if you could walk home with me as we're only a few minutes away from one another, Helias asked Raskal. Raskal smiled down at her, feeling happy at the prospect of walking home with Helias after school. Sure, Raskal exclaimed happily. I'd love to walk home with you. I've been getting a lift from Tolian's dad all week, but it will be nice to go for a stroll instead. You sure? Helias asked hesitantly. Of course. I'll meet you at the school gates after the final buzzer for the day goes, Raskal told Helias. Amazing. Thank you so much. You're my hero, Helias exclaimed. She put her hand on Raskal's arm and squeezed appreciatively. Raskal beamed at her. The buzzer rang, indicating break time was over. See you at the gate, Raskal told Helias and quickly made his way to class. Chapter 14. Later that day, Raskal rushed out of his last class and saw Tolian standing in the courtyard. Raskal hurried over to him. Hey, Tolian, I told Helias I would walk home with her today because her usual friend she walks home with isn't in school today. So I don't need the lift today. Is that okay? Raskal confirmed with Tolian. Tolian glanced at Raskal warily. Are you sure you don't want to jump in? Tolian asked cautiously. Yeah, I'll go for a stroll today, Raskal commented. Thank you for the offer, though. All right, if you're sure, Tolian replied. I guess I'll see you on Monday then, Tolian commented. I'll get in touch if there's any further developments. Tolian raised his eyebrows to make sure Raskal knew what he was referring to. Awesome, Raskal responded. I'll see you on Monday. Raskal hurried to the school gate as a bunch of other boys the two were friends with went to stand around Tolian. Raskal hurried to the school gate and saw that Helias was already standing there waiting for him. She dashed a dazzling smile in his direction. She was standing with a folder in her arms. She squeezed onto it tightly as Raskal approached her. She was wearing a pink casual blouse with a blazer on top and grey trousers. Raskal admired her face as he approached her. She definitely looked extra radiant in pink. My hero, Helias exclaimed as Raskal stood before her. Raskal grinned. Whenever you need me, he responded. Helias laughed. Well, let's go, hero, Helias instructed. Raskal and Helias began walking home together. They both spoke about their days and classes. Raskal enjoyed talking to Helias as they walked home. Their conversation took his mind off the killings and vampires being in their midst somewhere in town. Helias began telling him about her new keyboard, which was on a stand. Ooh, that sounds cool, Raskal replied. It is. I love it, Helias told him joyously. So, you've got a cool instrument thing going on at home, Raskal responded. Helias laughed. Well, hopefully I get a drum set next too. She laughed. Raskal smiled at her. The pair reached the top of Ferrodale Avenue and paused. Well, this is me, Helias exclaimed, coming to a standstill at the top of her road. Yep, Raskal murmured, stopping. He stood still at the top of their road to say goodbye. Do you want to come into my house? Helias asked hurriedly. Just to check out my new keyboard for a minute. Helias looked at him imploringly. Her green eyes were wide and inviting. Raskal flashed a smile. He felt excited at the prospect of going into this beautiful girl's house. Sure, Raskal responded. He was about to start walking towards 51 Ferrodale Avenue when he stopped still in his tracks. He had glanced at the collar of the blouse Helios was wearing and saw a red stain on it. Raskal felt the universe come to a standstill as he stared at the red stain. It looked like a dried stain of blood. Chapter 15. Raskal tried not to keep staring at the stain of blood on the collar of the blouse that Helios was wearing. Fear began gripping his insides intensely, and he tried not to become overcome with the terror that gripped him. He could not believe it. Helios was the vampire going on a killing spree in town. Probably with her parents and sister, Raskal thought to himself, if she really does live with her mum, dad and sister. Raskal began thinking back to their conversations and began viewing everything differently. He saw every conversation with a new perception, from her not relating to the fun of the 3-month summer and making up she was visiting family in America. She didn't relate because she was probably a million years old, Raskal thought to himself. He thought about how there hadn't been any killings until the new school year had started, since Helios and her family, if they lived with her, had moved into their town. Raskal felt sick with disgust and horror. Who had Helios fed on during school hours, Raskal suddenly thought to himself. He stared at her beautiful face, which suddenly became grotesque and disgusting. He wished he could shield his eyes from ever clapping eyes on her face again. He knew he had to be clever in those quick few moments, not letting her know that he had clocked on to the fact that she was the vampire killer murderer in town. She killed Shu now, Raskal thought to himself. She robbed a 17-year-old of their life, and those other poor victims too. Oh, on second thought, Raskal quickly said, trying to keep his voice steady and not show any fear. I had better go straight home so my parents don't have a go at me for getting back later than usual. Raskal hesitated, hoping she would believe his excuse. Oh, it will only take a minute, Helios insisted. Why is she trying to lure me into her house, Raskal thought to himself. To butcher and kill me in there. Raskal forced out a laugh. I wish I could, but I don't want to get into trouble with my parents. They'll be lecturing me all weekend about safety, Raskal pretended. Maybe I can pop in once the killer situation dies down a bit, Raskal suggested, still faking the conversation. He thought this might stop her from insisting he go into her house so determinedly. Oh, okay, Helios responded, looking disappointed. Raskal decided to fake compliment her quickly so she wouldn't suspect he had worked out anything. She seemed to enjoy his compliments in previous conversations and always giggled. Vampires must be vain, Raskal thought to himself. You really do look gorgeous in pink, though, Raskal tried to fool Helios so it didn't look like he knew anything. I admire your beauty every day, but today you look extra wow in pink. I hope this sucking up works, Raskal thought to himself. No pun intended. He waited with bated breath for a moment, hoping that she fell for it. A second later, Helios began grinning widely and giggling. Oh, you, Helios giggled happily. She tapped his arm flirtatiously. Raskal managed not to recoil away from her. He forced out the biggest false grin he could. Well, see you on Monday, gorgeous, he managed to force out as jollily as he could manage. See you, Helios beamed. She threw her arms around Raskal again, and Raskal pleaded to God in those moments to keep him safe. He hated the thought of her fangs near his neck. She released him a moment later, smiled widely again and left, turning towards her house. Raskal let out a sigh of relief when she was out of sight. He had survived realizing she was the vampire in front of herself, or one of them. Raskal made sure Helios didn't return for a moment and then rushed over to Tolian's house instead of his own. Chapter 16. Raskal ran to Tolian's house, which was only a few minutes away. He knocked breathlessly on the door. He carried on pounding until someone opened up. Tolian came to the door looking confused, what felt like a lifetime later. In reality, it had only been a minute or so. Tolian opened the door with a furrowed brow. Raskal, he murmured, surprised. What's wrong? Can I come in? Raskal begged. I know who the vampire is. Tolian gasped in shock. Of course, come in, Tolian instructed, ushering Raskal inside. Raskal stood panting, trying to get his breath back from running. It's Helios, Raskal managed to breathe out. What? Tolian tried not to shout. It's her, Raskal repeated. She's evil, Tolian. I saw a dried stain of blood on her collar. That means she fed in school. The killing started after her and her parent family moved to town. I'm going to get my dad, Tolian quickly exclaimed. Tolian ran into the living room and came out with his dad behind him, looking concerned. I told him all about it, Dad. Sorry, Tolian was explaining as the pair made their way over to Raskal. But he knows who it is, Tolian told his dad. It's hilarious, Raskal told Mr. Coleman. She had a dried stain of blood on her collar. Sometimes she sounds like she's a lot older than 17. It's definitely her. She's a vampire. She said she lives with her mum and dad and her sister called Monal. She lives on 51 Faradale Avenue. I don't know if the part about her family living with her is true or not. 51 Faradale Avenue, Mr. Coleman responded urgently. I've seen the new family once or twice. I've seen the new family once or twice. She definitely lives with her mum and dad and sister. What do we do? Raskal asked urgently. I'm going to call the police station and get the squad together with all our weapons and tell them to meet me on Faradale Avenue and tell them to keep their sirens off so they don't hear us approach, Mr. Coleman informed Raskal and Tolian. Can I come with you, Dad? Tolian asked. I want to see them die. Mr. Coleman paused for a moment. Can I come too? Raskal asked. She tricked me and I became her friend. She was trying to lure me to her house today to kill me, I think. I want to see them ended too. Well, it's dangerous, boys, but there will be a lot more of us than themselves. Do as I say and stay behind me, Mr. Coleman instructed. I'll let you both come. Thank you, Tolian and Raskal breathed simultaneously. Mr. Coleman went to speak to Mrs. Coleman to tell her what was going on. He called the police station and told his team to come with all the weapons they had. They were going to barge into the house and stake the whole family of vampires. Well done, Raskal, Tolian blurted. Well done, Raskal, Tolian turned to Raskal, thanking him. He looked like a burden had been lifted off his shoulders. Well done for working out it was her. Tolian couldn't help but pull Raskal into a grateful hug. She hugged me way too much to be a normal person, Raskal told Tolian, starting to feel relieved at knowing who the evil culprits were. Chapter 17. Around 10 minutes later, Tolian and Raskal were standing outside 51 Faradale Avenue with an army of police officers who were staying silent. There was no activity going on outside the house. Mr. Coleman gave one of the police officers a nod, and he broke down the front door with the equipment shown in a TV scene. The police officers all entered the premises along with Mr. Coleman, Tolian and Raskal. They all paused for a moment when they heard screams. The police officers looked in the direction the scream had come from. They saw a white door. One of the police officers nodded to the white door in front of the rest of the team. He made his way to the door, slowly opening it. Raskal could see that there was a staircase leading downwards. It looked like it led to a basement. The police officer in front gave another nod to the police officers and they charged silently down the stairs. Mr. Coleman, Tolian and Raskal followed them downstairs. Raskal's eyes opened wide in horror as he took in the scene before him. There were 2 victims tied up in a chair bleeding from different parts of their body. One of the victims was a woman and one was a man. They looked like they were both in their 30s. The police had managed to grab all 4 members of the vampire family. Raskal looked at the parents of Hilaeus in horror. Their fangs were protruding out of their mouths and their faces were covered in blood. They looked pure evil. They were all snarling at once. Raskal looked at Hilaeus. She too was snarling. Raskal looked at her fangs in horror. He looked at her sister Monal, who was a little taller than Hilaeus and could see she too had been beautiful. Now they looked like the most disgusting things he had ever seen. Sick, ugly, and twisted. She snarled, her fangs covered in blood. It looked like they had been torturing their 2 victims, biting them at different times in different places on their bodies. The bites must be painful, Raskal thought to himself in his head, thinking about the screams. All of a sudden, the police officers staked the vampire mum and vampire dad. Raskal and Tolian watched as they both turned into ashes before their eyes. A second later, after screaming, they were a pile of ashes on the basement floor. Keep those 2 alive for a moment, Mr. Coleman ordered the police officers. I want some information from them. Hilaeus noticed Raskal for the first time. You, she shouted, her eyes had turned red. Raskal found the courage to talk. Yes, me, he snapped back at her. You left a dried blood stain on your collar. You didn't clean up properly after your real lunch by the looks of things. Helias looked horrified. Mona looked at Helias and started snarling. Helias looked bewildered for a moment and then shouted, "Don't blame me," at her sister. "Were you trying to kill me? That's why you wanted me to come into your house," Raskal asked her, looking at her feeling disgusted. "Yes," Helias grinned. "Why?" Raskal asked. "Why me? Is that why you smiled at me in the first place, to lure me here and kill me?" Helias smiled again. "Oh, you want motive," Helias snarled. "You don't just think we're blood-hungry vampires eating?" Helias asked Raskal with an evil grin. "I don't buy that for a second. You're evil. What was your motive in killing me?" Raskal asked. Mono began to laugh evilly. "Well, we play games," Helias explained to him, enjoying shocking them all. "We all went to school once, decades ago, and we like pretending to be 17-year-olds in schools and killing and feeding on anyone we get jealous of. So I was jealous of Shunal's poem in the school magazine. So my parents and Monal said yes to that one. I showed them the poem. It was good, so it angered me. And now she doesn't exist anymore. So we got a happy power trip over that," Helias gloated to them all. "And the others?" Mr. Coleman asked quietly, looking disgusted. Helias stared her evil, menacing eyes on Mr. Coleman. "The others," she spat. "Well, I said we went to school decades ago, but we still get jealous of things post-school in the neighborhood to play around with people of all ages. My parents selected the first kills. What was it? 1 body in the park, 2 in an alleyway? We killed them for being well-known and popular in the neighborhood. They were called nice people. My parents spoke to our neighbors, and those 3 all had mentions. So we drained them all and killed them all," Helias bragged again. "And me?" Raskal asked. "What was your motive in killing me?" Helias seethed for a moment. Mono stared at him, glowering menacingly. "Well, you 2 are both popular. Everyone I spoke to at school mentioned you both being nice and friendly compared to others who are more in love with themselves and rude in the year," Helias told him. "So my jealousy build-up started again, and I suggested yourself first for a kill. I was going to work on Tolian later." Helias cackled at him. "You're pathetic, weak, evil scum," Mr. Coleman told them all, angry at the threat to his son. They didn't like being called pathetic and weak, and both started snarling again. "My seduction of you worked anyway," Helias bragged again. "I only had to flash a smile and my great beauty lured you in. You came to me, like a willing dish," Helias bragged again to Raskal. Raskal looked at Helias disgusted. "I knew there was something weird about you anyway. You left way too many smiley faces on your text messages for a secondary school student. And only evil weirdos have problems with American teen movies," Raskal snarled back. Helias glowered at him, speechless for the first time. "You're nothing," Raskal told Helias. "Nothing," Tolian repeated. Helias and Monal started screaming. "I am everything," Helias shouted. Monal carried on raging. The police officers gripped the 2 tightly. The 2 victims in their chairs watched the scene horrified. Both were still alive. "And who did you have for your lunch?" Mr. Coleman asked them both. The 2 vampires started laughing. "Mr. Carrad," Helias gloated. "The head teacher." Tolian and Raskal gasped in horror. "How could they? How could she kill Mr. Carrad?" Helias grinned. "He annoyed me. Center of attention. I'm older than him, really. He was center of attention at that assembly about Shunal the other day. So I thought I'd turn him into my snack." Helias cackled and cackled. Raskal and Tolian looked at the 2 vampires in horror. "And how did you become vampires?" Mr. Coleman continued to question them both, not reacting to the news about Mr. Carrad. Monal began winking at Mr. Coleman and licked her teeth in front of him. Helias responded. "We're from Peru originally," she told them all. "We prayed to our secret bad gods we worshipped to be powerful vampires, and they granted us our wish. We just had to make a sacrifice and kill someone before their statues. We picked someone who was popular as our sacrifice to please them. And it worked. We've been killing all over the world since," she bragged again. "Are there any more of you?" Mr. Coleman questioned Helias. She paused. "No, only us. We don't know of any others yet," Helias told Mr. Coleman. "Well, that'll be your last words," Mr. Coleman declared. "Stake them," he ordered the police officers. The police officers surrounding the 2 vampires staked both of them. Raskal and Tolian watched as the 2 screamed, their red eyes glowing. They turned to dust before their eyes. A pile of ash on the floor again, just like their parents, where pure evil had stood moments before. Mr. Coleman put his arms around both boys, Tolian and Rascal. "It's over," he told them both, sounding relieved. The nightmare was over. The police officers began untying the two victims from their chairs, whilst another officer called an ambulance. Chapter 18. Shortly after, Rascal and Tolian were both standing on the pavement outside 51 Faradale Avenue. The street was still full of police cars and an ambulance had arrived for the two victims. It looked like they were both going to survive. They were both in shock and were being taken to the hospital. Tolian and Rascal stood in silence, relieved about the vampires being caught and executed. Their town was free from evil again. They would mourn Mr. Carrad in their own time, but for now they were all safe. Mr. Coleman approached the pair. "Well done, boys. You were both very brave," Mr. Coleman praised the pair. "And well done, Rascal, for really realizing Helios was a vampire. You're a town hero." Rascal smiled. "Can I join the police force vampire squad now we know that they exist?" Rascal asked. It was his new mission in life, his calling to kill evil, whatever form it took. "Well, sure, you'd be an asset," Mr. Coleman told him. Rascal smiled happily. I'll keep an eye on the TV shows and films," Tolian added in. "Behind the scenes." The three of them laughed. "Okay, let's get you home, Rascal," Mr. Coleman instructed the boys. Rascal looked at his mobile phone. He had 10 missed calls from his mum. "What shall I tell my parents?" Rascal asked. "Don't worry," Mr. Coleman reassured him. "I'll take another police officer and Tolian with me to confirm that vampires exist, so they believe me. I'll tell them everything." Rascal and Tolian got into Mr. Coleman's car. He was going to drive around the corner to Rascal's house. Rascal turned to take one last look at 51 Faradale Avenue. He shuddered thinking of nearly being killed in there. He pledged to himself he would never be tricked by beauty or anything else ever again. He would dedicate himself to destroying evil in the world. No one had a right to take their happy lives away from them, Rascal thought to himself. Mr. Coleman put the car into ignition with an assistant police officer sitting next to him. Rascal leaned his head back in the car. The town was theirs again. Evil had been destroyed. Evil was dead. The end. So I hope everyone enjoyed part 2 of my teen horror novel Vampires Strike the Town, which is available on Amazon in paperback or on Kindle. So part 1 is the first half can be listened to on season 3 episode 12 of my podcast, and part 2 is season 3 episode 12. Okay, so thank you everyone for listening to this episode and to my podcast. Take care, have a fabulous week. I'll return next week with season 4 episode 1 of my podcast, and this is the end of season 3. Take care everyone. Bye.